Hey, Alabama basketball fans. This is Michael Southern from Tide Hoops History, and we are having a surprise episode 2 of the Blue Collar Podcast a little bit early. We did not think we would be back this soon, but want to thank everybody for all the views. It was very popular for our preseason preview of the Alabama basketball team. And of course, I am joined always by Emilee Smarr of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com. Emilee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Todd
Well,
started 1-0.
yeah,
So,
I appreciate you squeezing this in because I know you got a busy schedule this week, which includes you taking a trip to the Big Apple this weekend.
yes, we are going to be in NYC. I'm super excited. Didn't know if that was going to pan out, but luckily, Nate Oates has made it to where basketball is worth traveling for.
I know you're limited on time, so let's just get right to it. First thoughts. What did you think about the season opener on Monday? And what did you like and what did you not like? How about that?
Yeah, sure. The freshmen were great. I think that, everybody kind of gulped a little bit whenever it was announced that three players were going to be out with injury. And I know that we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So I won't go too far on that. But I think that seeing those freshmen step up in the way that they did, I mean, Collins and Yayaka had 5 rebounds in just the 6 minutes that he was on the floor. And of course, you can't forget about 12 points for Amari Allen and London Jemison, and especially how good Amari was just all around. Really great to step in there for Aiden Holloway. I really liked what I saw from the freshmen. LeBaron Philon looked great as ever. Of course, he still has to tighten up that handle a little bit, but he had a little bit bigger of a load on his hands without having, the creators that he's used to on the roster with him. So I really liked seeing this team, really just keep things consistent despite the circumstances that were against them. And also, the first half of defense, especially, I thought was pretty great to see. Just, I've talked about this a little bit, but pushing North Dakota in transition, getting the stops that they had to have, especially with 4 blocks by Aiden Sherrill. I think that it was a really good starting point, good to give them a little bit of confidence before they have such a big road matchup at St. John's. And of course, what they can improve on turnovers.
I think I agree with you. I was taken aback. I did not realize there were going to be so many injuries that impacted the starting lineup. But I was encouraged by what I saw from the freshmen. I like the fact, and we talked about this, they play, they're freshmen. They don't know any better. They play with no fear and
Yeah.
reckless abandon. Yes, were they a little loose with the ball? Maybe. But they were out there hustling, diving for balls, fighting for rebounds. I was surprised when I went back and looked at the box score that Amari Allen led the team in minutes with 32 minutes. So I did not
Yeah.
realize he had played that much. And then the other freshmen were all in the 20-minute range with the exception of Collins. So I thought very strong performance, a lot of things to be very excited about. I won't say concerned because they're going to just have to learn as freshmen, but very excited about what the core of this freshman class will be offering as the season progresses. All right, so let's turn the page a little bit and let's go to the opposite side. What were 1 or 2 things that you saw from this team? You're like, man, they're going to have to get a lot better, especially with what's coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I did accidentally hit on one earlier, but whenever I was just giving the whole recap, but
Yep,
turnovers are going
yep.
to be, they have to be limited. You can't go through the gauntlet that Nate Oates has with 15 turnovers per game. And, I think that we saw some performances last season that were, more turnover heavy, but at the same time, this non-conference schedule, in my opinion, is a lot stronger than last year's. And I think that the ball control has to be controlled, if you will. And another thing that I think, obviously rebounding. Last week was a lot better, but especially on the offensive glass, this team's going to have to pick it up and really make the most out of all the possessions that they get at St. John's.
So when I went back and looked at the box, if you look at the aggregate, rebounding looks solid. Of course, you're supposed to probably dominate a team like North Dakota on rebounding. I think they had like
Right.
46 rebounds, but I was surprised who the leading rebounder was. It was Houston Millette. So I can see, I saw stories from out there, and maybe you heard it too. Coach Oates wasn't the happiest with his front court players when you've got Houston Millette out there leading the team in rebounding.
Absolutely. Natos wants to see a lot more out of Taylor Bolo, and that was something that was really clear.
Yeah.
He said he had no rebounds in exhibitions, and I thought that was funny because Taylor did have 2 offensive rebounds against Furman, but it's a lot easier to remember him not having any rebounds against Florida State, his former team, which again, that could be explained just by it being his former team. But when you had guys like Clifford Amore and Grant Nelson last year just really owning the offensive glass, everybody has to step up in this front court, especially since they're so young, with the exception of Noah Williamson, the transfer from Bucknell. And, Taylor's older. He is a junior. He came from the ACC. So I think that Oates' expectations are warranted, and I hope to see him really rise to the challenge this weekend against St. John's.
I would agree because I can tell you right now with this non-conference schedule, and we already know how rugged the SEC plays. You've got some teams that like to get in there and just pound on you. Taylor's going to have to be ready for that, or I hate to say it, his playing time is going to get cut if he doesn't get in there and fight for those rebounds.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, let's ask this. Here's the important question as we head into the St. John's game, which St. John's ranked number 5, and then it gets even crazier with the number 1 ranked team. What is the injury status of Aden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell, and Keaton Bristow? Any updates or any inclination of what you think their statuses may be by Saturday?
It would be really premature for me to say, really, if I had any idea of whether or not these guys could be ready for Saturday, just because we thought that they were going to be ready the Thursday before they played North Dakota. I walked in, I did my score prediction. I was like, yeah, it could potentially be a 100-point game. And then we find out that 3 of, the really and truly the biggest pieces. I know that Keaton Bristow is new, but 3 of the biggest pieces of this team aren't going to be there. So again, that was another positive just to see how well this team performed in spite of that. But, okay, so Latrell Wrightsell's injury, it was a finger injury. I saw him get his hand wrapped after he went down against Furman. And it was pretty heavily wrapped. So that didn't really give me a lot of confidence. I didn't know how bad the injury was at that time. And I think that, based on what Oates said, he was expecting him to come back, but then he re-aggravated that injury during practice. So I think that if anything, if he does feel well enough, especially considering that his ACL is okay, I think that we could see Latrell just because it is a finger injury. I don't really have a lot of optimism on Keaton Bristow because he was booted on the sideline looking like Jaleel Bethea out there. So I don't see Keaton Bristow coming back for this one. Again, that could completely change. And Aden Holloway, it was the wrist injury flare-up. And frankly, we had no idea, at least I didn't have any idea, that there was a wrist injury that he was dealing with in the first place. That being said, though, I think that if it was just a flare-up and, it was a precaution, like, why would we use him against North Dakota if he could get hurt more? Let's save him for St. John's. I think that we could see Aden Holloway back in the lineup this weekend. But again, I don't have any solid updates on whether or not these guys would be available, but I am hopeful and optimistic that Latrell and Aden will be back. That being said, though, Oates didn't sound too optimistic that these guys were going to be back whenever we spoke after the game against North Dakota.
Well, 2 out of those 3 are 2 of your best shooters that you have on the team. And you could tell Alabama only shot 29.6% on threes against North Dakota. And I can tell you the pressure this weekend is going to be even greater on the 3-point line. So I hope that Aden and both Trelly can play. I'm agreeing with you. When we saw Keaton Bristow come out with a boot, that's not very encouraging. That's very concerning. And now that's a key piece that you're going to miss when you're talking about the fact that this team may struggle with rebounding against bigger sized teams. I'm a little concerned about that one too. Let's hope that at least 2 out of the 3 can play against St. John's. It would be great if all 3 can, but I don't know. I'm sure you probably already started doing your research on St. John's if you hadn't already last week. What in the matchup coming up concerns you the most? I'm going to give you my historical perspective after you give us the matchup and technical perspective.
Great. I think that the biggest thing that concerns me is, of course, this is a team that's going to slow down the pace. Yes, they can keep up with Alabama, but I think that slowing down the pace is going to kind of throw Alabama off, just based on how quickly they play. And if Alabama tries to force it too much, I think that we could see them get into some of the same trouble that they got into early against Florida State. Also, you have the number 1 transfer class in the country coming in, and that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because, of course, you have all of these really great pieces, but that being said, they're still trying to figure out how to build chemistry as a team. You got to hope it doesn't click this weekend if you want to win, but I think that could be, I think that the transfers are potentially going to be a problem for this team. And of course, you've got Zuby Ejiofor coming back, and that's going to be the biggest piece for St. John's by far. And again, I know that I talked about this a little bit whenever we spoke last week, but I just think that the environment of Madison Square Garden to begin with is going to be a big, intimidation factor almost. Not necessarily just because, ooh, we're playing St. John's in Madison Square Garden, but more so if you do have a lot of these freshmen who are going to be on the floor and supporting in these minutes, who's not going to be excited about playing in the Garden?
That's true. I would agree with
So
that.
I do still have that little bit of fear of starstruckness. And of course, you're going against the Hall of Fame coach in Rick Pitino. So this is going to be a really big test for Alabama moving forward. And I think that another thing too, depending on how they do against St. John's, it could put a target on their back for the games that lie ahead with Illinois, Purdue, Gonzaga. If you know that St. John's can beat Alabama, why can't we beat Alabama? I think that that's going to be the mindset that these teams would have moving forward. So this weekend's a big statement weekend for sure.
The way I kind of look at it is this: if Alabama had been healthy and we knew that Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell, and Keaton Bristow were going to be available out of the three big games coming up, I actually like this matchup the best for Alabama because from a physicality standpoint, it's just sheer measurables. They're not going to overwhelm Alabama from a size perspective in the front court like Purdue and Illinois and those other teams will.
Right.
But no Keaton Bristow and you're down to your best shooters, that's going to be a problem. And look, I think in the first game, even though they were like Alabama playing an overmatched opponent, I think they forced 22 turnovers, 32 points off turnovers. And like you said, if there's one coach, and I'll tell you this from my own personal historical perspective, if there's one coach that Alabama basketball fans, my generation and up, cannot stand and have night terrors about, it's Rick Pitino. I mean, he is the person that ended the run of the '87 team. Which, look, in my generation and the folks that you met last week, there were two teams during those periods that we thought were probably the two of the greatest Alabama teams ever until the '23 team. That was the '76 team under C.M. Newton. They got to the Sweet 16 and played Indiana, and it was the '87 team that went 16-2 in the SEC. Looked dominating in the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament and just got upended by Rick Pitino and Providence. I can assure you, many Alabama fans my age and up will never pull for a Rick Pitino coach team, and we want to see them lose every time he comes out on the court. And don't forget, Oates has already played Pitino twice now. He's 1-1 against him at Iona. In that first game in the NCAA tournament, they did the exact same thing. They drove Alabama crazy. They slowed it down, and they were playing in-your-face defense. So there is concern. I would feel much better if the roster was healthy, but Rick Pitino is I don't know. He's
like the hat man of college basketball.
Yes. So, and look, I say that not with hate. I say that not with fear. I just despise, but I do respect what he can do as a coach. So he is a really good coach. And I would expect St. John's to come out with a lot of energy and a lot of in your face. I'm like you. I want to see how Alabama responds. This is going to be a big test. This is what's going to prepare them to go play on the road in Florida on that Sunday. So hopefully they can learn from this. I'm very concerned about turnovers too. So
yeah,
LeBaron looked really good, except for a couple of bad passes. I don't want them to come out like they did against Auburn, though, so they're so fearful of making a turnover that they don't let the offense flow. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't know.
If St. John's goes on a big run early, I think that that's going to, and I know that it could be early, and Alabama can, push it as much as they want to. But I think that if St. John's has one big run early, that might be the end of it early on. And that could be a very bold take. Obviously, that is not my hope because Alabama is much more fun to cover when they win.
Well, they're much more fun to watch when they win too. How about that?
I'm sure.
I'll be like, all right. I know again you're pressed for time, so I think we're within our 20-minute time limit. So I really appreciate you carving out some time. When are you leaving Friday? You leaving early Friday morning?
This was really great timing on my part because I thought in my head, okay, they're probably going to leave on Friday. So I would imagine that the press conference would be on Thursday. No. Turns out press conference is at 12 o'clock or right around 12 o'clock on Friday. You know who's going to be on a plane at 12 o'clock
Oh
on
no,
Friday?
really? They're oh wow, really? They're doing it?
So I think this is my take. I don't know anything for certain. I think that Nate Oates is actually going to be on time for his press conference, which, if y'all don't know, that is not very common.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah. Normally if they're practicing during the week, we can, this is obviously not recommended if any young journalists are watching this, but you can be a little bit late to the quote unquote call time because Nate Oates is probably going to be late, which I respect it because obviously he is giving all of that extra time to his team. But yeah, normally on games like this, it is going to be, or for away games like this, Nate will be on time. They will be very quick answers, and he is going to be leaving straight from Coleman Coliseum to the airport. And
Wow.
then the team will be going on their way.
So I would have thought they would have left on Thursday night to have a Friday to acclimate, but they probably can't even practice in the Garden because they probably got an event going on there. So okay,
That's another good point as well. You know, just
yeah.
the way that they're getting there and everything. But yeah, we will be traveling in the air at around the same time. So
All right. So for Alabama basketball fans who want to watch the game who are not going, but I know quite a few people are going up for the game. So you're going to have some Alabama fans up there with you, Emilee. Game's going to be 11 a.m. our time on FS1. So it will be on Fox Sports 1. So I know most people aren't used to looking for college basketball on that one. And I think you mentioned that you might be able to maybe, are you going to do a feature story at the Ainsworth if you get in?
I think I'm going to. That's my
Okay,
goal. I
good.
made a call and I was just kind of like, "Hey guys, I'm a journalist. You don't I was like, I don't want food, I don't want drinks or anything. Just let me get the vibes of the atmosphere." And then whoever the hostess was went back and I talked to what I would presume would be their manager. So they said that they could potentially get me in at around 7:15 p.m.
All
Eastern.
right. Okay.
So
Well,
a few
good deal.
minutes late for
So
kickoff, but I'll just take being in the environment. It'll be fine.
no, you'll be fine. Kickoff's not till 6:30 our time, so that's 7:30 your time.
Probably.
So you'll have perfect timing. But I know some people. I definitely know one person already that's going to be there, so I'll tell them to come say hi to you. How about
Oh,
that?
please do. Yeah, if you're going to be at the Ainsworth on Saturday and you want to talk some Bama hoops in the middle of Bama football,
Oh, they want to talk both. They'll want to talk both.
I'll talk about
Absolutely.
all the above. Your girl will be there.
All right. Okay. Well, she is Emilee Smarr from the Tuscaloosa News, and she will be New York bound in a couple of days. And again, Emilee, thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right. And as always, she can't say it, but I can. Roll Tide, everyone, and good luck to the Tide on Saturday.